You've been quoted as saying that you don't believe in God, but you once were lining yourself up for the priesthood. Is this correct?
Yeah, I was educated. I was brought up a very strict Catholic. My mum and my dad are Irish, and I was brought up a very strict Catholic. I went to a Salesian college, which is like a teaching order, a bit like it's a kind of soft-core version of the Jesuits, and they really kind of hammer you with the religion. And so it leaves a mark on you that stays, I think. You're never rid of it. And in fact, the film I made before this, Millions, was a very little film, which sort of was partly a little bit about that. Yeah, and as soon as you go into outer space, of course, it's with this kind of film, it's there's something out there, you know, and it was one of the concerns of the script, was actually what the people see when they go out there, because they're all scientific atheists, but there is something,
yeah.
You know, when you confront this thing, the sun, that was what was extraordinary about making the film, was doing the research on the sun, which I brought along for you if you want me to read out any of it. I'm sure you don't. Having sat through 2 hours of that, you probably don't. But there's a great Flaming Lips song. I don't know if anybody knows it. A spoonful weighs a ton. And that's the best fact I always found about the sun, which is true. A spoonful weighs a ton.
Right.
So, great Flaming Lips song if you don't know it.
Cool. Well, I was going to say that, yeah, just about all of your films have got some sort of a reference of man having a really good look at himself and having a think about, is there a higher power? If not, is it within me, or is everything just fucked? And there is a lot of that going through your films. And you were just saying, of course, when you go into space, like we all have, how much in space were you making this film? Because it must have done your head in.
It's amazing. Just before do that, they did this thing we couldn't afford. We wanted to do the zero-G flight. Do you know what the zero-G flight is? You know where they did Apollo 13, where they all float around inside that plane. And we wanted to do that for the actors, but it's very expensive. We couldn't afford it. Once we'd made the film and Fox had seen it, they then paid for like 25 journalists and me to fly in this plane and to introduce their individual shows, because they were journalists from all over the world, from Brazil and from everywhere, floating around. So we went up in this zero-G plane, and they fly up to 34,000 feet, and then it plummets, and as it plummets, you go weightless for like 30 seconds, and it is absolutely amazing. You have to take these anti-nausea pills to stop yourself throwing up and stuff, but it's an amazing experience, and
a genius exercise in disorientating journalists as well. Yeah,
so they'll say really nice things about you, yeah. That was an absolutely amazing experience. But the film itself drove me absolutely insane, really. I've sort of recovered a bit of my sanity now, I think, but making it was like, it took 3 years, really. Everything takes so long, and I mean, it's all wrong. Like when people are weightless, the weird thing is about weightlessness is that it happens at the same speed as we act on Earth, but movies always show it you in slow motion. And you don't believe it if it's not in slow motion. But actually, if you hit someone in zero gravity, you still hit them like that. Everything moves quickly. But it just doesn't have anywhere to go, you know, it's just,
right.
There's nothing to stop it, you just keep going. So it's all wrong, of course, this slow motion stuff. But if you do it the right way, it just looks wrong, and you'd all have left by now, I think, saying, oh, that's rubbish. But it drove me mad, and...
This was a year of post-production, wasn't it?
Yeah, the CG stuff takes a year, you have to wait. It's really bad as well, because what happens is you try and make the film work with what you've got. So you tend to, it really is like a three-legged dog, and you try and make it run, you know? So that when people come and watch it, like your composer or whoever's coming in to see it, it'll work for them. So you actually distort the film to try and make it work without the CG, whereas in fact what you should do is leave big black spaces where the CG will go, and people just have to sit through all that, you know?
What was the main crux of the reason you just went, yeah, let's do this? Because I know you read the script in a pub, if I'm correct. Someone gave it to you in a pub, you had a meeting, and then you went, yep, I'll be doing this. Why? What was the one thing that you knew that this film had that you hadn't had yet?
Well, it's a sort of a continuity, because we made, Alex Garland, who wrote it, we'd made this film 28 days later together, and it was the next thing he'd written, really, and it was sort of partly that continuity and partly the sun. It seemed extraordinary that, like, everything in this room, everything you, me, everything, a bit of plastic, everything is a bit of exploded star. You know, I mean, everything is a bit of exploded star. And everything depends on that other star that hasn't exploded yet, that's you know, and if it blinks, we're all dead in 8 minutes, you know, every single one of us. And it was very weird. You thought, we couldn't find any film about it ever. There's a bit in Lost in Space where they travel through the sun, silly bit where they go through the sun. And there's a terrible film called Solar Crisis, which, if anybody knows, I'd love to talk to them about it, which is awful. And apart from that, we couldn't find any films about it, you know. Right. And it's the single most important thing in everybody's lives, bar none, you know. And so you thought, well, that's a wonderful place to start. You know?